So very, very warm welcome to everybody to the session today. Good morning, good afternoon. This session is mainly to introduce the SAP Cloud Platform Integration Suite. It is a portfolio of all the tools and all the integration tools and services that are available on the cloud platform that individually tackle different aspects of integration, and together putting them in the portfolio, we want to address all the integration use cases of a customer in a holistic fashion. Since this since these meetings have always been talking about SAP Cloud Platform Integration in detail, we would like to use these sessions, including today's and some upcoming ones, to introduce you to all the constituting services and tools that are a part of the suite. And once we get you up to speed with each of these constituting tools and services, we will change gears and go back to talking about the feature enhancements that happen on each of these tools and services that constitute the suite. So a disclaimer, just so that we try to introduce you to the tools and services. We do not get into too much in-depth details about each of these tools. So we're trying to look at a 10,000 feet view of these tools. Post the session, like I always write the blog, we will be sharing through this blog links to detailed tutorials, recordings, courses, blogs, and all other collaterals that are possible for each of these tools, so that you can go ahead and do in-depth study of each of the tools. And of course, if you have questions beyond that, please feel free to reach out to us. All right, so let's get started. In today's session, I would start with a high-level overview about the SAP Cloud Platform Integration Suite, after which Aarti Gopalan will provide us a synopsis of SAP Cloud Platform API Management and SAP Cloud Platform API Business Hub. And post that, Balakrishna Gotipati will introduce us to SAP Cloud Platform Enterprise Messaging, SAP Cloud Platform Functions, and SAP Cloud Platform Backend Services. All right. So let's get started. To set the context of why integration is important, you've all been hearing about intelligent enterprises in all the forums that you would have attended in SAP, and the idea here is that what makes an enterprise intelligent is not mere applications, but applications that can talk to each other, and hence integration becomes the number one strategic priority for all organizations in this digital age. Customers now demand connected digital experience across omni-channel engagements. And why have we gotten into this situation is because over the time, line of business leaders from finance, HR, procurement, sales, etc., just went ahead and deployed ready-to-run, best-in-breed, state-of-the-art applications, SaaS applications, to reduce cost and to move faster. Yeah, to be on top of the game. But however, what resulted as a result of this was that we kind of ended up creating a lot of silos with, none of these silos integrated to each other. We had data and processes spread across multiple applications, which obstructed a 360-degree view of the entire business, its customers, partners, employees, other stakeholders, and other entities of an organization. And hence, that posed a bigger problem to us because nobody had an end-to-end view of any scenario, any use case, and it was hard to take decisions and hard to get an overall picture of how things are progressing. Integration comes handy here because it tries to bridge these silos across applications, data, and processes. It provides a foundation to apply intelligence, enable digital interaction, and creates, the connected digital experience that customers have always been asking for. And through SAP Cloud Platform Integration Suite, which is our enterprise-level integration platform as a service, we try to simplify and accelerate enterprise integration, which would eventually help customers have an intelligent enterprise. All right. Before we begin, just to highlight how we are trying to, support this causes. First, the underlying message is that we try to make things as simple as possible for our customers. We try to keep the entire platform, entire ecosystem as open as possible. We try to cover as many use cases as possible, and we also build in, capabilities of self-learning so that we are with the times and we grow with how the environment is changing. So in order to emphasize on making things simpler, what we are trying to achieve here is to provide you as much as possible pre-delivered content. As of today, we stand at 725 plus APIs and 850 plus integration packages that help you connect from SAP to SAP and SAP to non-SAP. Yeah, and these are exhaustively developed and extensively tested, and which means that a new person who's trying to integrate two systems does not need to actually learn in-depth details about these backend systems or about the integration middleware. He already has a very good exhaustive set of how systems would interact, how would they integrate, and how would they communicate. And all he needs to do is just take the package, make minor adjustments around endpoint details or certificates, and actually he's ready to go. Of course, there are cases where this package is not sufficient for him, and he only needs to build on top of these packages. So these packages, if not used as it is, at least act as a very good starting point for customers to build on top of, which brings down the entire time to value from months to weeks, sometimes even days. Yeah, so we are trying to empower the end user to give him everything he needs to enable his end-to-end integration use case without having to learn everything from scratch right at the beginning, which obviously brings a faster time to value. With open integration, we are trying to achieve, seamless integration to a lot of third-party applications, and of course, SAP to SAP is the first priority, but also to third party. And we have a lot of tools that help us achieve this via, say, for instance, APIs from API management through connectivity in cloud platform integration, and also with the open connectors joining our suite recently. We are now open to, out-of-the-box integration with 150 plus third-party systems, and given the infrastructure provided by open connectors, it is a matter of several clicks by which you can actually configure a communication to a third party. It's really simple, really quick. So all this makes it even more easier to, integrate with third-party applications. And of course, if you still feel you need more, we have the very open facade, which we enable through our adapter development kit, which can be used very easily to develop more adapters. And we have a very large partner ecosystem, which is also highly committed to developing more and more connectivities, to cover more and more protocols to connect to many more third-party applications. Looking at holistic integration, what we're looking at here is not just process integration through A2A, B2B, B2G, but also broadening the scope with hybrid landscapes, with multi-device, talk about mobile, talk about tablets, talk about or multi-use cases like IoT, omni-channel access. We try to open ourselves up to everything that is going on in the market to, help customers in all their integration use cases, not just mere getting application to talk to applications, but also people talking to people, thing talking to thing. Yeah, so we try to basically bring in more and more tools that will help customer achieve integration between anything that is there in his organization, and he wants to have them talk. Moving on to, and of course with holistic integration, we are also looking at hybrid deployment options, only in the cloud, only on-premise, hybrid in cloud and premise, and also third-party infrastructure providers. And when we say holistic, we also mean that we don't just look at integration developers and integration experts, but we also try to empower the business users, the business experts to be able to do fraction of a great amount of their integration requirements, that they are able to implement it on their own. We cover this in a bit, but we try to also, make things so simple that it is easily consumable by business users who are not very technically, in depth into writing code or developing scripts and things like that. Okay, then moving to the more self-learning mode of keeping the suite up to date with whatever is the latest and the greatest in the market. We have introduced what we call as the Integration Content Advisor, which is a machine learning utility on top of the suite. It is based on crowdsourcing, wherein what we do is we learn from how customers implement a particular interface mapping. Yeah, and we grow our database of the possible mappings for a possible interface, and when somebody uses this tool to understand how customers use or integrate interfaces, we use these learnings to make recommendations to this customer to show how customers, for instance, integrate two complex B2B interfaces. So the idea is that we not just make recommendations on how a customer could integrate two complex interfaces, but also help the customer generate the corresponding artifacts like the structure definition, the service definition, the mapping, and the corresponding documentation that will help them understand the interface and the mapping better. So you can imagine that in a B2B world, we already have a lot of formats, a lot of standard structures, standard interfaces that are available, and with businesses having their own customizations on top. The integration between different B2B interfaces, the complexity that is involved is growing astronomically. And with a tool like Integration Content Advisor, all this boils down to getting recommendations and then choosing on top of it whether it makes sense or not, than creating everything from scratch. All right. So that's how we, from the suite, are trying to tackle, trying to make enterprises more connected, and the underlying idea is that how we try to do this is with these three aims that we have. First, we try to enable real-time digital interaction. And here, first of all, as I already mentioned, we don't just try to integrate applications, but also people, processes, and data. And we look at, integrating them anywhere, on-prem, on cloud, in the edge, on third-party infrastructures. So we try to incorporate everything that may be possible in a customer's landscape to be able to easily and seamlessly integrate them, and we make information available at real time to all the applications involved, so that we have crossed the age where we integrate or we sync up once a day or once a week. Everyone needs information right then, right there, and the idea here is to be able to keep all the systems that are part of a use case in sync with each other with real-time data sharing, and this is enabled via the tools and services of the suite. What we are also looking at to make an enterprise intelligent is to give a simplified connected experience. Here we make use of workflows and business tools to orchestrate people, processes, events, and we also make use of dynamic business tools to take decisions and to automate decision making here. We have enabled omni-channel experience through APIs, and this is something that Aarti would be talking about in a bit. And again, as we already mentioned, we are integrating SAP with SAP and non-SAP applications in the cloud, in a hybrid landscape, on-premise. So we have everything embedded inside the suite to be able to give that simplified connected experience to the customer. And what we're also looking at is it the concept of process excellence. So we don't just look at your applications talking to each other, but also application in a more holistic fashion of a end-to-end process like hire to retire, lead to cash, consume to cash, procure to pay. The idea here is that like any organization, every organization has grown by together with also growing themselves, but also through acquisitions and mergers. And of course, as customers, you would have also, as I mentioned, bought best in breed applications which have a very proprietary flavor to them, and getting an end-to-end feel or a consistent feel or a seamless feel for a use case, which encompasses these applications is highly difficult without integration. So what we try to do is we deeply integrate these applications so that they all have access to the same data set, they all use the same login credentials so that the customer is not required to log in at each step, and we give a more consistent and a seamless experience to the customer so that for him it is the process, not the applications that he sees, oblivious of the applications that are involved. He just sees the flow. And of course, with the sense and respond, which Balu will be talking about in a bit, we see how we basically bring serverless architecture to use for process excellence. All right, moving on. This is the key slide for the the SAP Cloud Platform Integration Suite. And before I start talking about this, I would like to take the time to highlight the mission of the suite. And the idea here is to simplify integration and help organizations lower costs of development and ownership, increase agility, improve customer experience, collaborate in real time, and achieve process excellence. And how we are trying to do this is to tackle, first of all, as I already mentioned about the out-of-the-box integration, holistic integration, open integration, and artificial intelligence-backed integration. But the more important thing is to be more inclusive, to be more democratized in terms of who can use or who can work on these integration tools. And what we strongly believe from the suite perspective is that integration capabilities should not be centralized to competency centers, but should be made available to the whole organization. Business users as citizen integrators can then build their own integrations without relying on the central integration teams all the time. So we create very intuitive, simple to use applications that can simplify integration for people with diverse skill sets through variety of these tools and integration approaches. Of course, together with prepackaged content, which will provide ready-to-go integration and can rapidly reduce the development times. And APIs and digital teams can then also build semantic APIs to, again, accelerate the digital applications. So the idea here is that we try to make the tools as simple. We try to provide you as many possible pre-delivered content so that your entire time to market or time to value is reduced. You do not need to gain a lot of skills before you actually get your hands dirty, and you are able to build integration without relying on a central integration team. Now, what we are trying to showcase here with the row 2 and row 3 of scenarios and services is this is a common question or a common query from our customers, that we know you have so many services, but we are really not sure of when to use what. And with this, what we are trying to do with the suite, not just with this diagram, is we are trying to map the best possible tool or service to the corresponding use case to create optimum integration projects or integration implementations. So I will just take the time to talk about the common use cases that we are seeing as of today, but please, this is not an exhaustive list. We grow, we are an ever-growing suite with not just the scenarios, but also services will be constantly added looking at the market requirements. So, but let me take the time to talk about the couple of key use cases that we are trying to address through the suite. Starting off with A2A, you're already aware of A2A, where we want to communicate, we want to have applications within an organization communicate with one another to eventually, fulfill a process. And here, Cloud Platform Integration comes handy. Of course, Integration Content Advisor, which is the machine learning tool, helps build mappings between complex interfaces. We have also Smart Data Integration that helps in the data integration kind of use cases. And with, again, the open connectors, we are now also we widen our scope to connect to non-SAP applications that also fall as a part of the A2A process. Moving to B2B, of course, again, also a good use case for Cloud Platform Integration. Here we support the traditional electronic data exchange, the EDI, as well as through API management, we are trying to create real-time API-based integrations. Yeah. And soon joining the gang would be the blockchain use case, wherein we will be enabling blockchain to have businesses talk to each other to foster trustful relationships between businesses in a business network. Yeah. Then, of course, a scenario that is getting a lot of traction of late is the B2G scenario, where we are basically trying to comply to the regulations that are laid down by the government of a region or a country, whereby we try to imbibe transparency, and we try to improve governance, by helping the customers get up and running on the B2G use cases as early as possible. And in order to support this use case, what we are trying to do is not just build the tools to out-of-the-box support these requirements, but also build a lot of pre-delivered content which are extremely rich in, the use cases or the requirements from the government, so that the customers don't need to now break their head to try and understand and translate that into how we can achieve it, but providing them ready samples, ready templates to, use and customize maybe somewhat customize for their own business. But typically, we try to not just provide content, we try to enhance the tools to out-of-the-box support these kind of use cases. And together with this, we also from SAP are looking at add-ons on top of the S/4HANA suite to do all the work from the S/4HANA side of the house, to collect all the required information, to create trigger, to send the information at the right time. So all this is we are trying to automate and simulate for you, so that you don't really feel stressed. And every government, every country had laid kind of strict timelines on by when all the companies need to comply to a particular regulation. And with all these things to your rescue, you actually don't need to fret. You can directly use it and get up and running ASAP. All right, moving on, the next topic is omnichannel access via APIs. This is something that Aarti will already be covering today. But just to give you a high-level overview, organizations are using APIs to create omnichannel access, that is one, but also trying to hide the complexity of their heterogeneous landscapes. Together with that, they are creating a development environment, an environment where or a developer ecosystem where they are trying to expose their APIs, trying to create an ecosystem of APIs, which is also something which we see later down the line. But we are trying to create this ecosystem, and we are trying to also monetize on top of these APIs that we expose. So all of this covered in detail by Aarti, but this is also some use case that we heavily are looking at, because there is a lot growing in the API economy, and we would want our customers to leverage from that economy as well. Moving on with digital processes and apps. So with workflow and with business rules, we are trying to support our customers to, create process-based digital applications to manage their processes, and these are all natively built for the cloud. So we have workflow in the cloud. We have business rules and inbox in the cloud. So all of this to support your digital processes and apps. Then we have event-driven sense and respond pattern, which is achieved through the IoT service on top of the cloud platform. Plus, we have serverless processing, which Balu would be talking about in a bit, so I leave it for him to cover, but it is basically around enabling sense and respond patterns with enterprise messaging and with serverless function as a service. Ecosystem and marketplace I already just touched upon briefly, but it is basically something that is dominating the business collaboration for organizations, and customers are using open APIs to integrate into these marketplace. With APIs, they are trying to create an ecosystem for themselves and also a marketplace for themselves to be able to monetize on top of the APIs that they're exposing. Moving on, what is something which is very, very significant that I want to talk about here is in the context of microservices, wherein, especially in the case of microservices, we need to we make a lot of calls to get data, and here making these calls to actual database would cost a lot in terms of throughput and performance. So what we try to do is to introduce a concept which we refer to as the IMDG, which is in-memory data grids, wherein we create copies of the data from the database into RAM, but as key value pairs, as data grids in the RAM, so that any information that is requested is then pulled from the RAM than from the database, and hence it pulls up the performance, it improves the throughput, and helps perform microservices processing faster. So these are the typical use cases, but as I said, this is not an exhaustive list. We have an ever-growing list. We have an ever-growing list of use cases for the suite, and not just the use cases, but more and more services and tools are joining the suite, just so that we have a holistic view to integration, that the customer, if he has an integration problem, he will definitely find a tool that can solve this problem in the suite. Okay, quickly, a quick wrap-up. We already touched upon out-of-the-box integration, simple semantic APIs, open connectors, machine learning through Integration Content Advisor. What I would like to highlight here is that we are all the tools that are added as a part of the suite are built in a cloud-native fashion. We have all these tools built in a highly secure, highly available, multi-tenant way, which is also enabled with disaster recovery. Of course, some of these services are added services which are additionally charged, but we have these services on top of each of these services and tools, the integration services and tools that are part of the suite. And what is more important is that once you buy a service, or once you subscribe to a service, you are not bound to use it all the time, because we not just have a subscription-based model, but also a consumption-based model, which we also refer to as pay-as-you-go. Here you basically buy cloud credits, and on a monthly basis, you can switch between applications and tools on your own in a self-service mode. So you can pick and choose the services you want. So it gives you a lot of flexibility to be able to use what fits best for you. You're not you buy something and you're stuck with it for the whole year. No, you take it, you try to use it. If it fulfills your requirement, yes, good. Otherwise, you switch to another tool, another service on the suite. And it's not just limited to the suite. It is basically for all services and applications and tools on the cloud platform. Last but not the least, we are going multi-cloud to give you the flexibility to choose the vendor of choice. Maybe your stakeholders are on some cloud and you would like to be there just so that you have better interaction with them. Maybe you prefer a particular vendor, or maybe you have better SLAs with some vendor. We are right now beta on AWS. We are anyway available on the SAP Cloud Platform. We will soon be also available on Microsoft Azure and Google Cloud Platform. Plus, we are opening our doors to private clouds as well. So we are making things more and more flexible, more and more digestible for you, so that actually sky's the limit for you, and you can just do whatever you want with the suite. And we wish you all the luck. Please take the time to try out these things. Most of the tools and services do have a trial associated with them. If you need any further information on this, please do feel free to reach out to us. I would stop here and hand it over to Aarti. Aarti, please do take over.
Thank you, Meghna. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this round. As Meghna mentioned, while the intelligent enterprise is the focus and integration is supporting the intelligent enterprise, we will be also bringing you up to speed on the different services. And the first session is about SAP Cloud Platform API Management. I'm Aarti Gopalan. I'm part of the product management team focusing on the Cloud Platform Integration Services. And in this session, the idea is to share the motivation behind API management itself and how our customers are using it, right? And also how SAP and SAP Cloud Platform is supporting it. So as it was earlier mentioned, and obviously the fact remains that businesses are today concerned about not just their digital transformation journey, but also going beyond it. They are looking at creation of an intelligent enterprise, right? So if you look at businesses and how they are looking at the whole journey, you see that they are focusing on delivering simple, connected digital experiences to customers, partners, and to their own employees. And this becomes the focus. So if you take few examples across the industry, the automotive industry, where an automaker focuses on being able to connect with their tier 1 suppliers, their partners, and their vendor ecosystem, right? They basically want to create a seamless connectivity and integrate their supply chain management system in a way that you have a thriving ecosystem in place, right? If you consider the retail industry, the focus is on providing a nice omni-channel experience where right recommendations are shared to the consumer based on their profiles. Basically, best-in-class experience is the focus. And in a normal day-to-day job perspective, an employee needs access to information in the organizational backend system, right? But if you look at any organization today, they have all moved away from being a single ERP system to having heterogeneous and complex landscapes. We are all looking at, multi-cloud and hybrid environments which are existing as part of the IT landscape, right? The need is to abstract out this layer of complexity and bring out the right relevant set of information to our employees. And that becomes the focus and that becomes the challenge of all businesses across the world. The creation of business networks, as rightly pointed by Meghna earlier, being part of the procurement network, travel network is the focus and the challenge across businesses. So this is basically where we see the two-speed IT evolving, as well as the bi-model architecture, as it is called, otherwise called, evolving, where you have on one side you have the reliable, stable core systems which power your businesses. And on the other side, you have the need for being able to rapidly develop applications, right, evolve the existing applications, or focus on creating integrations based on the business requirements across your ecosystem. And all this is being supported by APIs. APIs have become the digital building blocks which help you in hiding the complexities, bringing out this abstraction layer and helping you in creating this connectedness, right, the layer of connectedness that we are talking about. So, Meghna did take us through a couple of scenarios that we have identified and we are working upon as integration services on the whole. But we taking the concept of API management and how APIs are supporting and have become the digital building blocks. Let us take a couple of use cases. So when we looked at our customer use cases, we see that they are, falling into one of these 4 buckets, and how they are using it is in the first bucket, if you see, there are use cases which are around creation of extension scenarios, right, building new applications or extending applications that meet a business need. It may be as simple as providing applications which are used by employees to do their, day-to-day job. The need here is to establish simple and effective connectivity into the backend systems and to hide the underlying complexities in general, right? In the second bucket, if you look at it, the use cases are around businesses being able to share real-time information to their partners, to their customers, to their vendors, right? They access to relevant set of information, hiding away the internal details. When you look at it from an organizational firewall perspective, right, when you're sharing data outside the firewall, the expectation is finally to handle threats and secure the access to organizational data lakes, right, when you're sharing it with external ecosystems. And the third bucket is where businesses are trying to share their core functionalities as services to their ecosystem in general, which includes not just the external ecosystem but also internal ecosystem. Here it may be internal business units of an organization which are consuming these core functionalities which are offered by IT, right? The model of microservices and basically the support of creation of modular solutions by this ecosystem in general. The value networks that exist for an organization is what is being focused upon. And the final or the fourth bucket that we look at is when businesses are sharing these core competencies, can you basically tap into the digital economy, the API economy which exists out there. So these are the scenarios where internal APIs as well as publicly shared APIs are being leveraged by businesses today to develop and to build upon the digital economy which is existing, right? But when you are looking at businesses being, sharing their systems of records, data and processes to the ecosystem, the obvious need is to share these in a controlled environment to secure and govern the way in which it is being accessed by the everybody and anybody in the ecosystem in the value network, right? How is this particular interface going to be shared? What is the request which has to be sent for the appropriate response has to be designed at the organization level. How is your API going to be developed? What is the data or the process which is going to be shared for consumption via this endpoint that you are exposing, right? This needs to be implemented very carefully. Is the API that you are sharing reliable enough? Is it, is your backend, is your core backend that you are sharing and, allowing access to? Is it protected from the threats of any external world, right? These are factors which needs to be managed. How is the performance of your API? Is it stable enough? Is it scalable? How many consumers or applications are using these APIs? Are the calls overloading your system, right? You need to monitor your API calls. How it is being used has to be analyzed, and errors, if any, has to be recognized and fixed at the right point in time. So this becomes another focus area which any organization needs to care about. And when you are exposing your core competencies to the external world, can you identify the usage? Can you generate a new channel of revenue for yourself? Right? It is also one of the key questions most organizations are looking at, the aspect of commercialization or monetization. Can you bill your external customers, your consumers, your application developers according to the usage, meter how it is being used, right? And basically find out how many transactions are being made, and in case a business unit internally in an organization is using it, can you apply chargeback model, showback model, the policies from a financial perspective, and basically leverage on how the value which is associated with these services which are shared, with these data and processes which are shared. These are key questions. So if you look at it from an end-to-end perspective, there is a full lifecycle management aspect associated with the services, and API management, or rather SAP Cloud Platform API Management tooling, supports this end-to-end lifecycle of APIs of services. Right. Let me also quickly brush upon the simple, one of our success stories, which is from PostNL. PostNL is a typical, is a postal service which is based out of Netherlands. For obvious reasons, they started looking at a digital transformation journey for themselves, right? And their objective was to increase revenue, to improve their customer service, to increase their growth. Right? They looked at SAP API Management service capability to, basically look at newer channel of revenue. What they did is they started sharing their core competencies in the form of a service. So they have created a service catalog for themselves, and they have shared it with multiple of their business partners. For example, they have an e-auction site who is a partner of theirs. The e-auction site has a platform and sellers and buyers. And here, what PostNL was able to provide, because of the data that they have and their core competency, which is around being able to verify and validate an address, for example, right? Being able to generate shipping costs, predict or calculate the shipping costs which will be applied. Being able to, predict the possibility of the delivery date, being able to indicate which is the drop-off location, which is the pickup point, right? This helps both the seller as well as the buyer in easing the way they transact across the e-auction site, which basically meant that Personal was helping their partners in providing best-in-class service, right, to their customers. And in turn, Personal was also being used as the service provider, right, of choice by the sellers and buyers who are using this e-auction site, which basically resulted in a growth in revenue, shorter time to value, faster cash flow, readiness to rapidly engage with additional business partners, right? Basically be able to scale and be able to performantly provide these core competencies as services across to their partners as well as consumers in the end. This is how SAP Cloud Platform API Management really helped one of our customers, right? Let us look at the context which we have been setting so far. We have talked about the two-speed IT architecture on one side where you have the stable, reliable backend systems, and on the other side you have organizations which are designing and implementing these endpoints. So we see the role of an API developer who focuses on designing and implementing these endpoints. For this, we have the component API designer, which helps you in iteratively designing as well as validating your the APIs that you have defined, right, across with your application developers. We have the role of API administrator, where the governance aspects of APIs, securing and defining threat protection policies are supported with the component of API portal. We have the developer portal component, which allows application developers to basically discover, try out, and build applications, right, of the services which are being shared. So you actually get to experience the service before consuming it, and the consumption has also been made simple with the industry standards that we have used. And then we have the API gateway component, which is the actual runtime, which when an application which can be either a mobile or a web application, you consumes a service from and basically the data and processes shared by your backend systems. Then the API gateway ensures that the user propagation, the access control, the authorization aspects are taken care at runtime. So the key capabilities of API management are, one, that you can design, we make use of Open API specification, which is an industry standard to help you define and design your APIs. We work with RAML and OData APIs, right? So which means that most of the APIs the protocols are being covered. We support generation of server stubs as well as client SDK generation in multiple languages, which eases the consumption as well as the development in the implementation aspects of the interface itself. From API administration perspective, we did mention about the rich tooling set which is available as part of API management and the different components that we provide to take care of the complete life cycle, right? From a developer engagement perspective, we have the developer portal which allows the engagement, as well as we have the role awareness which is supported by developer portal, which means as a business you can define who can access the APIs, who can test it, and who can consume the APIs. So you can actually differentiate between the developer's ecosystem that is accessing your APIs, your services which are being shared, and your core systems which are being shared, right? We have a comprehensive set of API analytics. We have out-of-the-box ready-made charts which are available, which allows you to view the usage, view errors, if any, in the APIs which are being shared, view how performant they are. We also subscribe into the SAP's multi-cloud strategy, which means we have API management available on the AWS infrastructure currently, and you can tap into the multi-cloud availability. Right. So what we have been hearing about so far is about API management, which allows you as an organization, as a business, to engage with your developers to manage the services, manage the endpoints which are being shared with your developer ecosystem, right? SAP also is subscribing to this theory and is managing how the developer system and supporting their developer ecosystem, right, via the SAP API Business Hub. SAP API Business Hub was also mentioned very clearly during Meghna's pitch on Integration Suite and how SAP is focusing on providing accelerators and out-of-box integration content to our developers, right? SAP API Business Hub is a catalog and a central place for all integration flows from SAP. We have around 800 odd integration flows, and this number is obviously growing, which supports SAP to SAP as well as third-party integrations with ease. We also provide multiple APIs, 700 and odd APIs from SAP, as well as we have select partners sharing APIs on API Business Hub, which allows you to discover, to connect to these different systems, to be it SAP or non-SAP systems with ease. You can try out as a developer, you can try out and experience the content which has been shared, the integration content which has been shared before consuming it. And for the consumption purposes, we have tight integration with the different developer environments which are provided by SAP, which include Web ID, Cloud Platform Integration, and API Management, which means as a consumption, it is as simple as it can be equated to plug and play, where you have out-of-the-box integrations available which can be very easily consumed. With this short introduction, let me hand it over back to Meghna and for Balu to take you through enterprise messaging, PaaS and DaaS. Thank you, Meghna.
Thank you very much, Aarti. That was very, very insightful. I would now hand it over to Balu.
Yes, thanks, Meghna. Hi, everyone. I'm Balu Krishna, and I'll take you through the serverless computing on SAP Cloud Platform, which essentially consists of Enterprise Messaging, Cloud Platform Functions, and Backend Service. And we'll just give you an overview, and then please reach out if you want more details or you want to, look at your use cases and further your discussions there. So, intelligent enterprise, being an integrated enterprise, is something which Meghna talked about earlier in the session. And so, from my side, I'll just point out a couple of things that we would really focus on over the next 10 minutes or so, and how these services actually add value there in terms of integrating between SAP and non-SAP systems in both the cloud and hybrid landscapes, and also to be able to provide business events in a manner that you can sense and respond to events in a proactive manner. Okay, so moving on, I think the whole idea of event-driven architecture or event-driven innovation for the context of intelligent enterprise is something which really makes sense, where you're always trying to bridge, you're always looking for ways in which you can sense what is going on in your enterprise with respect to your business, and trying to be always ready for various situations and change accordingly if there is something that goes as per plan or doesn't, right? So this provides a connection between how you could actually create some intelligent use cases or do something very intelligent based on event-driven architectures. So this helps you to do a lot of things which are more or less obvious in an event-driven world, which is more to create situational awareness, because you're always sensing on what's going on. Something happened, whether there is a production order that's cancelled all of a sudden, or a customer gets created, and you name it, right? So there are a lot of events that happen in a business system, and then how do you get them out to be able to receive it and send it and deliver it across the various network, across the landscape, to be able to get it to the right application or service that can actually respond to that particular situation. Yeah. So, and this kind of a pattern is rapidly evolving in that sense that more and more businesses and architectures are somehow taking this into consideration and even investing in such kind of an architecture. And enterprise messaging, being the cloud messaging service from SAP Cloud Platform, plays a central role in the ability to be able to communicate and distribute events and messages in a manner that is asynchronous and reliable and at extremely high volumes. So if you look at enterprise messaging, in terms of its communication, what does this really mean when we say, let's say, asynchronous? Asynchronous simply means that you're able to send messages in a store and forward pattern. Where do you store? You obviously keep it in a queue, and then whenever the receiver is in a position to receive that message, the message is delivered to the receiver, and then there is an acknowledgement, so to ensure that the message is being processed at the receiver end, and then there is a sense of reliability there as well. That is built in. So this is how the pattern of asynchronous communication happens, where you're also decoupling the communication, so the sender doesn't have to wait for the receiver to actually take that information and process it and give back some result, but then they can communicate decoupled through something in between, which is essentially a broker, an event broker, if you will, or a message broker, which uses queues and topics as a medium to transfer messages or information. So this need not be done just 1:1. It can be done many to many. So you can have different queues or topics where you can have the various senders sending in information, right? And then there are various receivers receiving the information, whether an employee is onboarded or when employee hired. All of these can be events that are put into various topics or queues, and then whoever is interested or whichever application is interested in receiving such an information to process or to create new, innovative scenarios or use cases can use that information and do something with it. Yeah, so that's essentially at its core what enterprise messaging does. If you look at it in the context of S/4HANA, it takes it to the level of where you have a semantic meaning to it. So, for instance, you have S/4HANA systems, right? So, and with S/4HANA systems, enterprise messaging has an out-of-the-box integration. So you will see how that works. So SAP Cloud Platform is the platform or the extension platform of choice, right? So for your extending your business applications or your existing processes on your S/4HANA system and so on. So how would you typically build your application, right? So you would build your application on your cloud platform. You use Java or JavaScript. You maybe use SAP UI5 and so on. And basically what you would do is you would connect to your existing systems through standard APIs. We have many OData APIs that are there, which are documented and cataloged in the Business Hub and so on. So you use those APIs. You maybe have a HANA as a service on your SAP Cloud Platform. You probably store some data there. So this is your typical application that you would build on cloud. Now, the one thing that misses here is that this application cannot be event-driven because it does not. It has to be only on a request and response. So it cannot, even if it wants to, it cannot, let's say, react to a particular event that happens on your S/4HANA. So from that sense, in that sense, it is still disconnected, right? So with enterprise messaging, what happens is with a few set of configurations, you can connect S/4HANA and enterprise messaging so that any application, whether it is on the SAP Cloud Platform or not, can start subscribing to those events or messages on the enterprise messaging and can react to those events. So let's say you have this application relates to something to do with business partners or customers and so on, right? So whenever there's a business partner changed or created and so on, so you will have the message that is received by enterprise messaging, and that message or event is kind of distributed to all of those applications and services that are subscribed to that particular event type. So this basically brings out new possibilities in terms of being able to not do everything request pattern or do it manually, but then do a lot of intelligent automation in terms of whenever something happens, you just create some logic so that you are able to react to that event almost instantly. Yeah. So that kind of opens up a lot of possibilities. And you need not have everything done only inside of the SAP Cloud Platform. You can, we have a lot of open protocols with HTTP, so that is also one of the protocols using which cloud integration, for instance, can talk to enterprise messaging to be able to send or receive events from S4HANA or any other application, and the same channel can be used for, let's say, sending or receiving events from any third-party applications or services. Yeah, so this is broadly how enterprise messaging kind of works. Yeah, so this enables you to have one distribution network for asynchronous information or information that needs to be sent asynchronously or reliably, and at high volumes. So taking this one step further, this is a traditional application, right? So what if you want to do this in a serverless manner, right? So SAP Cloud Platform Functions is one of the latest offerings on the SAP Cloud Platform, where Functions is a fully managed cloud service that enables you to build, run, and manage applications. Application functionality, so to speak. And you would create these application functionality in the form of what are known as functions. And these run in a serverless environment. What do we mean by serverless environment? So if you look at the traditional mode of cloud application development today, along with the application functionality that you would build, you would have to handle a lot of things with respect to the runtime that is there, meaning you would have to make sure that this is always running. You would have to scale it if auto-scaling is not there. You would have, and this is obviously not always event-driven. The resilience part of it is something which you would have to handle, and you would have to, in general, manage the entire operations of that particular application, right? So even though this is an evolution from the traditional on-premise or private cloud approach, but this is still something where you have a lot of things that you are managing in addition to building your functionality. In contrast, the serverless approach strips all the other overheads where the customer is responsible only for the application code and nothing else. So the application code is written by a user or developer, and then just by clicking a button, you activate /deploy, and then the functionality starts running then and there instantly, right? So it scales automatically, and everything is operated and deployed on by the platform completely in a managed manner. Right, so the customer or the developer doesn't have to worry about anything in terms of the life cycle other than the functionality that the developer is writing. This gives a huge gain in terms of cost, in terms of speed to development, in terms of time to market, and so on. So that is the serverless approach, and Functions is a compute service based on a serverless environment. What that means that there is no notion of a server and all that for the person or the developers or the customers or for you who are using that. So all you have to do is write code, application functionality. Today we support JavaScript as a functionality, as a way in which you can write application functionality. You activate, deploy it, and then it is done and it's running. It can be triggered through events. It can be triggered through a standard HTTP way of accessing, nothing like a REST API, or you can trigger a function or an application functionality through a schedule, right? You can say it should run every 1 hour or every day and so on, right? So this kind of changes the whole dynamic in terms of how you are doing development and what it costs in terms of for you to be able to do your development. Right, so it's extremely fast to value. It scales automatically. You don't have to worry about the operations. The cost is obviously much lower, and you don't have to compromise on any of the enterprise grade features. Similarly, when in a serverless mode, we also have another service called Backend service. This is a fully managed API service that is working in a serverless environment. So think about how you would create new APIs, right? So today, if you have to create new APIs with whatever storage attached to it, you would obviously go into a cloud platform. You would provision some database as a service. You would reserve some application instances. You would start your coding. You would use a Spring Boot application or a Java application or a Node-based application, and then you would write your REST APIs or OData APIs, and then you would build them, package them and then deploy them and then start operating. And then you have your APIs ready. With backend service, all you have to do is just describe what kind of an API you want in terms of the fields, what type of the fields, data types, and so on. You can describe it in a manner which is comfortable to you, meaning you can use Swagger or OpenAPI type of description. You can use EDMX, OData EDMX way of describing or modeling your API, or you can use the HANA CDS modeling. And then once the model, you've written your model, you just upload it into the service, and then you have a fully functional API for you to run along with the necessary persistency attached to it. So you don't have to worry about anything just apart from consuming that API. So the running of the API is completely managed by the backend service. So these are the two new services on the serverless front, and both are on beta, available for you to just try it out, and then please do reach out to us if you need more information, and if you want any feedback is really welcome and appreciated. So with that, I think so that's pretty much it. Check out our serverless page, sapcloudplatform.sap.com site. You should be able to see all our services which are coming up on the serverless computing front. With that, I hand it back to Meghna.
Thank you very much, Balu. That was very, very insightful for me. Thank you very much. That's it for today.